It seems like there's never enough time to cover all of the material we want to in our courses, so we need to choose that content in a purposeful way. The natural urge is to cover all material we possibly can about each topic. The research is clear that simply dumping a large volume of information into a course does not translate into a large volume of learning. But it can be challenging to determine how to limit what we share. So how do we make those decisions? First, we focus on the content that helps students meet the learning outcomes you set for your course. Content is, in essence, a series of topics or examples that illustrate the bigger, disciplinary ways we want our students to think. For example, if our learning outcome is that students will be able to analyze the interactions between the environment and infectious diseases in humans, we might choose between malaria, Ebola, cholera, tuberculosis, and Lyme disease as our content, but we won't have time to go in depth for all 5. If students spend more time focusing on only 1 or 2 of these content pieces, they will have practiced the bigger skills we care about. Next, consider what materials students need to have in order to complete the assignments. If a specific topic, reading, or example doesn't directly prepare students to practice the thinking we want to see in their assignments, we should consider whether there is already other content that serves the assignment and whether this specific content is either redundant or tangential. We ultimately want to focus on what we want students to take away at the end. Don't let the textbook choose the content or even the order in which it appears. This is one of the benefits of using open educational resources. You can introduce them in an order that makes sense for the story your class is telling. Following these principles may mean leaving out content you're very fond of. And while it is a challenge to let something go, when you cover less content with greater depth, your students learn more. How we organize content sends the loudest message to our students about what we care about. If we're more concerned with concepts than chronology, but still arrange our course chronologically, students will continue to focus on dates rather than on concepts. So what organizational structure will best illustrate the content we value? One way to approach this is to determine a narrative arc or storyline of your course. Human brains connect with stories in meaningful ways. So when students see how content connects and builds over time with a beginning, middle, and end, they retain the content. You might choose to organize your content around big questions in your discipline, chronologically, or from microstructures to macro systems, just to name a few possibilities. The key is to choose the order intentionally. As experts, we know the storyline inside and out, how all the parts of a course are connected. But students don't automatically see those connections. To encode information into long-term memory, students must see the existence of a structure. Otherwise, random pieces of content aren't attached to each other, and students will have trouble retrieving relevant information. So how do we share the structure of our content? Start by making the hierarchical relationships between content explicit. What pieces are key concepts and what are illustrating examples? Make the structure explicit. Why does this content appear now? And how is it connected to what's come before? What are the underlying principles or logic of the big picture where this new information fits? Intentionally structured content might look radically different from previous iterations of your course, or it may look almost identical. The benefit to student learning comes not from any specific structure itself, but in making that structure visible to our students.